Hello students, welcome to EPG Patasala. I am Dr. K.R. Rammohan, Associate Professor, Head Department of Anthropology, Sikkim University. Today we are going to talk a module on biological theories of culture and sociobiology. So this module comes in theories and methods in social cultural anthropology. So before we go this module, let us see what are the learning objectives. Through this module, you will be able to know about the biological theories of culture and the concept of sociobiology and the theories of evolution, cultural ecology and neo-evolutionism. Now, the principal question in anthropology is that how did societies, cultures evolved? So everybody agreed that group of people makes a society, and society, when we say a society, there are certain features for society: a territoriality, people living together. There are certain laws regulating the social behavior. There is an economy. There is an environment. All these structural features when we can say it is a society. But what governs this society is the culture. That is, to put it simply, culture means a way of life, how people live, how people organize themselves, and how members of that society share a common meaning of their behavior. Now, being understood these two concepts, anthropologists and other scholars started to know how does a culture develops generally or even evolves. So the most popular understanding is that cultures evolve from uniformly and they progress in the time span. Scholars who took evolutionary approach that cultures have evolved from one stage to another stage have heavily influenced from Charles Darwin's theory of evolution and natural selection, which is basically a biological concept of the organisms. That Charles Darwin's theory of evolution says that mankind has evolved from simple single cell organism to multicellular organisms. So there is a sequence of pattern of evolutionary growth. Perhaps they could believe that even like organisms have taken a simple trajectory, cultures might have also taken a trajectory of from one stage to another stage, one to another stage. And all the cultures in this society might have taken the same route. And each culture, each society might have some internal dynamics, and that culture might have developed. But overall, if you look at the entire pattern, the sequence, that all cultures evolved more or less samely in this manner. But they also said that what was the social change? Social change, I said that there could be some change within a specific culture for some reasons. So development was there, which is internally determined. So taking this evolutionary perspective, one can say that yes, societies were primitive at one stage and it has evolved into civilized states or civilized modes of living. So this was fundamental in 19th century classical social evolutionists. But Drawing the Enlightenment thought, Charles Darwin's work, and the new cross-cultural historical and archaeological evidence, a whole generation of social evolutionary theories emerged, starting from Edward Bernard Tyler and Louis Henry Morgan. So these theories developed, though in some points rival schemes of overall social cultural progress and the origins of different institutions such as religion, marriage, and family. Why these four institutions are important? At one level, culture. Within this culture, you have religion, you have marriage, and you have family. So the main protagonists of this theory of evolution, when we talk of cultural evolution, is Herbert Spencer and Charles Darwin. So when we go deep, the term evolution represents the process of gradual development from one stage to another stage, or we can say simply from simple to complex. So this is the progress through which simple things over the time becomes more complex, and taking the cues of Darwin's most celebrated book or work on the origin of species. So Spencer also took the same ideas from Darwin, that societies might have also developed in the same lines like biological organisms. Though Spencer's theory had huge influence during his lifetime, there were other scholars emerged like Tyler, Morgan, Bastian, and Razor, considered as evolutionists. And with this, Taylor's famous work on primitive culture, which was as published in 1871. And with this book, Taylor gave this the most standard definition of on culture, culture or civilization, taken in its wide ethnographic sense, is that complex whole which includes belief, art, morals, law, custom, and any other capabilities acquired by a man as a member of that society. And with this famous definition of culture, he proposed this unilineal evolution, that all cultures pass through the same level and same process. According to Taylor, society's evolution is unidirectional and passes through different stages. And he proposed these theories, three theories of evolution, saying that all the societies must have been savagery. They're in a savagery kind of primitive stage. Then later on, these savagery societies might have become barbaric, fighting with each other for resources, for other food materials and all. Then slowly, these barbaric societies might have come into a civilizational societies. And Taylor further assumed that the primitive men were hunter-gatherers at a lower level of existence. So they had this whole hunting gathering to some other stage like pastoralism. Pastoralism to horticulturist and horticulture to settled agriculture. Taking along the lines of Taylor, we have the other set is Morgan's views on this whole evolutionary perspective. He was the one who first gave very good book on ancient society, which is published in 1877. So Morgan was interested in the evolution of number of specific things. Unlike Taylor, which gives that cultures pass through these stages and cultures might have these different sets of economies, subsistence pattern. So Morgan listed them as The economies must have subsistence, government, language, family, religion, house life, architecture and property. He was interested with these things. How did these things evolve from simple societies to complex societies? For example, in the evolution of the family, he was examining the ethnic communities in Hawaiian Islands in near USA. Morgan anticipated that human beings of the past used to live in primitive hordes where they used to practice unregulated sexual behavior, and as a result people could not identify their own offsprings, who are the father, who is the mother. After that they came an institution where people try to get confused. No, let us not do this sexual behavior because we are not getting confused with our children. A group of men marrying to group of women, even that also get confused. Then people started exchanging brother and sister marriage, then led to individual marriages in this chronological order. But this was basically an anticipation. Then again he started looking at how societies, today we have a patriarchal societies at large, but at one point of time there was matriarchal societies at large, and how the systems of family have emerged from matriarchal society to patriarchal society, from economy to politics. And Morgan was also interested how different aesthetics, example arts of subsistence, have evolved. So according to him, the development went through 5 successive stages in chronological order. These are natural substance with fruits, fish subsistence, farinaceous subsistence cultivation, meat and milk subsistence, and the last one is the unlimited subsistence through field agriculture. But these are all schemes that Morgan might have anticipated. On the evolution of social institutions, Morgan speculated at least the first there was kinship based societies, and then came the territorial and politically based societies. So for Morgan, the cultural features distinguishing these various stages arose from a few aspects of his thought process. Now, humans were still savages, then later developed into principal institutions of mankind, associated with a sequence of different cultural patterns. So Morgan was interested how a polygamous marriage and family institution might have lead to a monogamous, a single family unit. So he traced down perhaps all the societies must have passed through the same stage. And today we have the monogamous marriage with one single family. So this sequence of evolution of family, however, has not been collected with a lot of ethnographic data, and still some of the scholars are little skeptical whether this sequence is fully correct or not. So challenging this evolutionary scheme of various social institutions like religion, marriage, family, economy, a new breed of thinking started, especially with the functionalism by Malinowski, saying that culture is like an integrated whole. Culture did not come as an evolutionary perspective, and this is not an isolated parts. So here we can see the biological analogy like an organism, like how an organism or an animal has different parts of the body which are functioning for the whole animal or whole organism, and each part is related to other parts of the body. Some are direct, some are indirect, but it propels the organism to move, to act. So perhaps functionalism took the same analogy, a biological analogy, to the culture and opined that how a particular cultural phase is interrelated with other aspects of the culture and how it makes a whole system of a society. In other words, it is like cause and effect. So they wanted to understand various cultural institutions that make up a society and to explain individual social functions of each social units and their contribution to the overall functioning, not only functioning but stability of a society. So in that sense, Malinowski is credited with biocultural functionalism. In that sense, the sociobiology analogy has been understood in this context as how culture has interrelated all the parts, not just a collection or isolated units. So his famous work, particularly in the Trobriand Islands of New Guinea, Malinowski has come out with this theory of functionalism. So a culture is composed of many different elements such as food acquisition, family relationships, housing, and many other social institutions. So Malinowski proposed that all these elements are connected and work together for one single purpose, which it must meet the needs of the individuals in any culture. So culture exists to satisfy the biological, psychological, social, and other needs of the individuals. Hence, we have the existence of culture. That could be the reason why all societies have cultures and they are in place. Today we have. In the same strand, another prominent school of evolution is this, apart from functionalism, is historical particularism by Franz Boas, who is also regarded as a father of American anthropology. Because Boas' contribution was noteworthy as he logically criticized the ethnocentric view of evolutionism. And Boas was also serious critic of armchair anthropologists before his time, that anthropologists are sitting with big arms and chairs, just theorizing by not doing ethnographic fieldworks. As a result, Boas was more interested not with the evolutionary scheme, but with this historical particularism, that cultures must be understood in its own from a historical vantage point of view. Not a scheme that so simple to complex things. So taking that analogy, the modern industrial societies, people are using diverse sources of. So how a particular society has evolved from time to time, what are the historical currents have taken place. So Boas' method of historical particularism asked for taking more and more data. The more data an ethnographer collects, the more deeper understanding one has. In this same strand also we can get a more instance of neo-evolutionism, which are more interested how cultures change over a period of time and why people use different sources of energy and why there is transmission in culture. The more complex use of technology, the more becomes the cultural development. So Leslie White proposed this neo-evolutionary scheme that cultures did not pass through an unilinear direction. Cultures might have developed, cultures have, according to the situations, according to the environment, according to the energy levels produced by the people who are more inventive. So it is also called to some extent ecological anthropology, where environment dictates the key feature here, and within that environment how the energy is harnessed by the people, which is beautifully given by Julian Stewart, classified evolution suggested by into three categories. In his theory, he did not focus on particular or individual culture, that culture in a broad sense. So Stewart classified himself as a multilineal evolutionist in a sense that cultures evolved separately in different phases. They did not follow a single strand of evolution. Sequence of parallel culture change in different areas, because a social system is determined by its environmental resources, not a historical phase. So the main idea of cultural ecology is to determine whether cultural adaptation toward the natural environment has led to social transformation and evolutionary change. So one has to understand how cultures adapted towards given environment. What were the mechanisms? Why did they adapt? And why cultures could not adapt at the other side? So Stewart emphasized the interrelation among natural conditions in the environment like rainfall, temperature, soils, technology, social organization, and people's behavior towards a particular socio-cultural system. Now, having understood this, we need to come back again to see this whole sociobiology. Now, sociobiology started with this whole concept again with Darwin's theory of natural selection, and organisms compete each other for survival. Why some species have more population, why some species do not have population? So Darwin thought that there could be strong competition for resources. Not all individual organisms that are born, in fact, because there is survival, struggle, and to reproduce. Hence, he says that struggle for existence. Now, Darwin also interested because of the struggle for existence. There are more chances for reproduction, sexual selection, and there are less chances for reproduction. And there could be maladaptive features for adaptation, which leads to disintegration. That is why he says that people and origins species as natural selection. So natural selection chooses from occurring differences and genetic mutations. These features that tend to increase fitness, and Darwin refers this process for a long time, which is complex and highly functional, how organisms adapt to environments. So taking this Darwin's theory of natural selection, struggle for existence, the term sociobiology was introduced by E. Wilson in his book The New Synthesis, where it propagates that the systematic study of biological basis of all social behavior. Unless if you don't study the biological base, one cannot describe the social behavior. That is the whole argument of sociobiology. So Wilson seems to intend the biological basis of behavior. Perhaps it could be at a genetical level, and which he refers to social and ecological causes driving this evolution of behavior, mostly in animal populations. than what is happening neurological and psychological causes of behavior in individuals. So that means it is not just biological per se, but how the organisms have adapted towards the natural environment, which could be the basis of social behavior. However, Wilson clearly thought that sociobiology and neuroscience both might have lot of interactions and overlapping, in a sense that, is it true that because of the neurological exchange taking place between ions in a given neuron is the propelling our behavior, or it has been already there from since generations which is causing our behavior? So Wilson references to this evolution as usually taken to Darwin's theory of natural selection. Although Wilson accept the action of selection on animal or human societies can result in maladaptive outcomes also. Now, with this, sociobiology is also given to this a new branch called behavioral ecology. Behavioral ecology is a science that uses evolutionary theory, especially the adaptationist methods, which try to understand animal behavior. Why a particular animal behave in such a way? Perhaps it could be the adaptation to that given environment for its survival, for its existence, and that is the cause for its own jumping. For example, a small of jumping. Why jumping for that particular animal? Or why it eats particular food? And why it behaves, the way it sleeps, the way it runs. All these things are being attributed to the adaptationist method. That's why it is called the behavioral ecology. Now, on the other hand, sociobiologists focus strongly on selective pressures predicted by theory, on the principle of maximization of inclusive fitness. Again, it takes parallels from struggle for existence, the animal fittest of the survival. So, how a behavior in a given context is being adapted for a long period of time, which is also called behavioral adaptation to the environment. Sociobiology sometimes also refers to early Freudian understanding, where how certain changes have taken place at sexual level. Why males behave in such way? Why females behave in such way? Why males are aggressive? Why females are not aggressive? What is the gender differences in their behavior? Is it just selective, or is it just being adaptive behavior? To summarize the whole contents of the evolutionary perspectives and sociobiological perspectives is that the early impetus of understanding how societies and cultures might have occurred, evolved, and changed. So the proponents have taken largely the clues from biological evolution by Charles Darwin, how organisms have developed from single cellular to molecular organisms. Tracing the same analogy, Early anthropologists like Taylor, Morgan have understood that societies and cultures might have passed through series of changes from simple to complex. And various social institutions like family, marriage, economy, political organization might have also started with some form and later come to a different form. Within this evolutionary perspectives, we also seen Franz Boas' historical particularism, which rejected the comparative method and says that historical particularism is very important in understanding of a given specific culture from an historical vantage point. How and why a social institution has developed, which become culture specific, which is further given by Malinowski's concept of functionalism. So functionalism by Malinowski took the analogy of an organism, stating that how an organism is related with internal parts, which maintains the whole existence of the organism and also the stability of the organism. The same analogy is also taken to the culture, though culture is not a loose parts and units, but all parts are interrelated each other to maintain the existence and stability of the culture. Then again we have seen the neo-evolution, which states that cultures did not pass through unilinear evolution, but they are phases of multilinear evolution where cultures are more adaptive in terms of harnessing energy. So those cultures which have harnessed energy, which have developed more, and those cultures who did not harness energy have remained more or less developed in terms of development. Then the new approaches of sociobiology, which also took mostly from biological evolution and how societies adapt to the given environment, which also understanding give a new perspective of behavioral ecology, how particular organisms adapt and how do they behave, which has a biological base which manifests in social practice.